For many years, millions of television viewers believed they knew the real Richard Chamberlain. He appeared on their screens as a charming, confident, and handsome leading man. His gentle smile and calm voice made him one of the most beloved actors of his time. When he starred in the famous television drama Dr. Kildare in the early 1960s, he quickly became a household name across the United States and around the world. Young fans admired him, magazines printed glowing stories about his life, and Hollywood studios promoted him as the perfect romantic hero. From the outside, everything about his life seemed bright and successful. However, behind the fame and admiration, Richard Chamberlain was living with a deep and painful secret. For decades, he felt forced to hide an important part of who he truly was. The entertainment industry at that time was very different from today. Actors were expected to maintain a certain public image that studios believed audiences wanted to see. If an actor did not fit that image, studios worried it could damage their popularity and careers. Because of this pressure, Chamberlain spent much of his early life pretending to be someone he was not. The world saw a confident star, but privately, he often felt anxious, lonely, and afraid that his secret might be discovered. This double life shaped many of the choices he made and affected his relationships with others. Even when he was surrounded by fans and fame, he sometimes felt isolated because he could not live openly. The story of Richard Chamberlain is not only about a famous actor. It is also about the emotional cost of hiding one's true identity in a time when society was far less accepting than it is today. Richard Chamberlain was born on March 31, 1934, in Los Angeles, California. He grew up in a family that appeared stable and comfortable from the outside. His father, Charles "Chuck" Chamberlain, worked in sales and later moved through several different business ventures. His mother, Elsa Chamberlain, had a natural talent for singing and acting, although she never pursued a professional career in the arts. The family lived in Beverly Hills, a neighborhood known for wealth and success. On the surface, it seemed like a good place for a young boy to grow up. Yet life inside the Chamberlain household was not always peaceful. Richard later spoke openly about the struggles his family faced, especially because of his father's problems with alcohol. Chuck Chamberlain's drinking created tension and sadness in the home, leaving a lasting impression on young Richard. Even though his father eventually became sober through the support group Alcoholics Anonymous and later helped others recover from addiction, the emotional wounds from those earlier years remained. As a child, Richard often felt shy and unsure of himself. He struggled with low self-confidence and frequently believed that something about him was different from other children. At school, he was quiet and reserved, rarely seeking attention from classmates. Although people sometimes noticed that he was tall and handsome, Richard did not see himself that way. Instead, he often focused on his insecurities. Growing up in an environment where problems were hidden behind a public image of success taught him an early lesson. Sometimes families pretend everything is fine even when they are struggling inside. This habit of hiding emotions would later become a major part of his adult life. Without realizing it, Richard was already learning how to protect his private feelings by keeping them out of public view. As Richard grew older, these feelings of uncertainty followed him through his teenage years. He attended Beverly Hills High School, where many students came from wealthy or influential families. For some teenagers, that environment felt exciting and full of opportunity. For Richard, however, it sometimes increased his sense of being an outsider. He watched other students who seemed confident, athletic, and popular, while he often preferred quiet activities such as reading, drawing, or thinking about art. His older brother Bill was several years ahead of him and had a very different personality. Bill was outgoing, successful in sports, and popular among classmates. Seeing his brother receive attention and praise sometimes made Richard feel even more invisible. Although he respected his brother, he struggled with comparing himself to him. During these years, Richard began to sense feelings that he did not fully understand at the time. He realized he was attracted to men, something that was rarely discussed openly during the 1940s and early 1950s. In that era, many people believed homosexuality was wrong or even illegal, and it was often treated as a mental illness. Because of these attitudes, Richard felt deep fear about his identity. Instead of speaking about his feelings, he hid them carefully. He focused on school and personal interests, trying to appear normal while keeping his inner thoughts private. Eventually, he attended Pomona College in California, where he studied art history and painting. At first, he imagined a quiet future as an artist, someone who could spend his life creating paintings rather than standing in front of large audiences. Yet during his time at college, something unexpected happened. A professor encouraged him to try acting in a student theater production. Even though he was extremely nervous, he accepted the challenge. When he stepped onto the stage for the first time, he felt something powerful. Acting allowed him to express emotions that he had kept hidden for years. In a strange way, performing as other characters helped him feel more alive. This discovery would slowly guide him toward a career that would change his life forever. After graduating from Pomona College in 1956, Richard Chamberlain believed he was slowly moving toward a career in the arts. Acting had begun to excite him, but he was still unsure whether it would truly become his future. Before he could make a final decision, however, history intervened. In December of that year, he was drafted into the United States Army. Chamberlain was sent to serve in post-war Korea, a place still recovering from the destruction of the Korean War. For a young man who had grown up in California's comfortable neighborhoods, the experience was both challenging and eye-opening. Military life demanded discipline, strength, and a clear sense of identity. Soldiers were expected to display toughness and confidence, and any sign of weakness could draw unwanted attention. For Chamberlain, who was already struggling privately with his identity, this environment created constant stress. During the 1950s, the American military had strict policies against homosexuality, and anyone suspected of being gay could face investigation, punishment, or discharge. Because of this, Chamberlain lived with the quiet fear that his secret might somehow be exposed. Yet the time in Korea also gave him space to think deeply about his future. Away from Hollywood, family expectations, and college life, he spent many long evenings reflecting on what truly made him feel alive. He remembered the energy he felt on stage during his college theater performances and realized that acting had touched something deep inside him. When his service ended after about 16 months, he returned to the United States with a clearer understanding of what he wanted to pursue. Acting, despite its risks and uncertainties, seemed to offer a path that felt meaningful. It allowed him to step into different characters and express emotions that he often kept hidden in his real life. This realization pushed him to take the next step toward a professional acting career. Once he returned to California, Chamberlain began working seriously to enter the entertainment industry. The late 1950s and early 1960s were a time when Hollywood studios still controlled many parts of an actor's career. Young performers were often signed to contracts that shaped how they dressed, spoke, and even how they behaved in public. Chamberlain soon found himself part of that system. His tall frame, soft voice, and classic good looks made him stand out during auditions. Casting agents believed he had the perfect appearance for a television leading man. In 1961, his life changed dramatically when he was chosen to play the main role in the medical drama Dr. Kildare. The show told the story of a young and compassionate doctor learning about medicine and life while working in a busy hospital. Audiences quickly connected with the character, and Chamberlain became a major star almost overnight. Teen magazines printed his photos, fan clubs formed around the world, and viewers admired his calm and thoughtful performance. He was often described as one of the most attractive actors on television. However, the sudden fame also brought heavy pressure. Studio executives wanted to protect his image as a romantic hero who appealed to female fans. At that time, Hollywood believed that leading men needed to appear available and interested in women to maintain their popularity. As a result, the studio carefully guided the public story of Chamberlain's personal life. Magazine articles suggested he was dating different actresses, even when those stories were not true. Public appearances were managed carefully, and personal questions were often answered with rehearsed responses. For Chamberlain, this situation created a difficult emotional conflict. On the outside, he was celebrated as a handsome heartthrob, but privately, he felt that an important part of his life had to remain hidden. The more successful he became, the more complicated it felt to reveal the truth. While fame brought him recognition and wealth, it also forced him to maintain the carefully controlled image created by Hollywood. Chamberlain learned to be extremely cautious about his private life. Friends who understood his true identity often kept silent out of loyalty and respect, knowing how easily a scandal could damage his career in that era. In public spaces, he avoided situations that might lead to uncomfortable questions. He sometimes traveled quietly or stayed in hotels under different names to protect his privacy. These habits became part of the double life that many people later discussed when learning about his story. Even though he was surrounded by success, Chamberlain sometimes felt isolated by the need for secrecy. The television audiences who loved him believed they knew the real person behind the character, yet much of his personal truth remained hidden from them. This experience was not unique to him. Many actors in mid-20th century Hollywood felt similar pressure to hide aspects of their identity in order to protect their careers. Still, Chamberlain carried that burden for many years while continuing to build an impressive acting career. After the success of Dr. Kildare, he went on to appear in films, stage productions, and major television projects. Over time, he became known as one of the leading performers in large television miniseries, earning the nickname King of the Miniseries. His performances in productions such as Shogun and The Thorn Birds brought him international praise and introduced his work to new generations of viewers. Yet behind the applause and awards, the quiet struggle inside him continued. The question of whether he could ever live openly remained one of the most difficult decisions of his life. As the years passed, Richard Chamberlain's career continued to grow, and his reputation as a talented actor became stronger with each new role. After the success of Dr. Kildare, he did not allow himself to become trapped in a single type of character. Instead, he worked hard to prove that he was more than just a television heartthrob. During the late 1960s and 1970s, he began exploring new opportunities in film, theater, and international projects. This period allowed him to develop his skills as a serious actor and gain the respect of critics, as well as audiences. One of his most notable achievements came when he played the title role in The Three Musketeers and its sequel, where he portrayed the heroic character Aramis. The film was widely praised and showed that Chamberlain could succeed outside of television. Around the same time, he also spent several years working in England, performing in classical theater productions. Appearing on the stage gave him a sense of artistic freedom that was very different from the carefully controlled world of Hollywood television. Theater audiences were more focused on performance than celebrity image, and this environment allowed Chamberlain to express himself creatively without the same level of media attention. Still, the personal struggles he carried did not disappear. Even as he achieved professional success, he continued to live with the quiet pressure of hiding his true identity. In public interviews, he often spoke politely about his career and interests, but he avoided discussing his private relationships. Many people admired his charm and talent, yet very few truly knew what he was experiencing emotionally. The contrast between his public success and private loneliness became one of the defining aspects of his life during these decades. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, Chamberlain entered another major chapter of his career that would bring him global recognition once again. Television networks began producing large historical dramas, known as miniseries, which were long stories told over several episodes. These productions required actors who could carry complex characters across many hours of storytelling, and Chamberlain proved to be an excellent choice. His performance in the epic television series Shogun introduced audiences to a dramatic story set in feudal Japan. The show became extremely popular and earned strong reviews for its storytelling and performances. Chamberlain's role as an English sailor navigating a foreign culture showed his ability to portray determination, vulnerability, and courage at the same time. A few years later, he appeared in another major miniseries, The Thorn Birds. In this emotional drama, he played Father Ralph de Bracassard, a priest who struggles with a powerful romantic relationship that conflicts with his religious vows. The story captured the attention of millions of viewers around the world and became one of the most successful television events of the decade. Ironically, the character's internal conflict about forbidden love closely reflected the emotional struggles Chamberlain had experienced in his own life. Many viewers believed they were simply watching an excellent performance, but for the actor the role carried a deeper personal meaning. It reminded him of the complicated balance between public expectations and private truth that had shaped so much of his life. The success of these miniseries earned him the nickname King of the Miniseries, confirming his place among the most recognized television stars of his generation. Despite his achievements, Chamberlain continued to feel the weight of secrecy in his personal life. For many years, he shared a relationship with actor and producer Martin Rabbit. The two met in the 1970s and eventually built a long partnership that included living together in Hawaii for a period of time. Their relationship was meaningful and supportive, but they were careful about how much of it was visible to the public. In an era when many people in the entertainment industry feared negative reactions from studios, audiences, or sponsors, maintaining privacy seemed like the safest choice. Chamberlain later explained that he believed revealing the truth earlier in his career might have ended many of the opportunities he had worked so hard to achieve. The entertainment world of the mid-20th century was not always welcoming to actors who openly identified as gay, and many performers worried about losing their careers if they spoke honestly. As a result, Chamberlain spent decades answering personal questions with carefully chosen words while protecting the reality of his life. This constant effort to maintain two identities could be emotionally exhausting. Friends who knew him well often described him as thoughtful, gentle, and intelligent, but they also noticed that he sometimes carried a sense of sadness beneath his calm personality. Even so, he continued working steadily in television, theater, and film, building a career that lasted for many decades. Over time, society began to change, and public attitudes towards sexuality slowly became more open and accepting. These cultural shifts would eventually create the opportunity for Chamberlain to share his truth with the world, a moment that would finally bring an end to the long period of silence that had defined so much of his life. For many decades, Richard Chamberlain carefully protected the private side of his life while continuing to work in the entertainment industry. By the 1990s and early 2000s, however, society had begun to change in important ways. Conversations about identity, personal freedom, and equality were becoming more open than they had been during the early years of his career. Younger actors were beginning to speak honestly about their lives, and audiences were slowly becoming more accepting of people who lived differently from traditional expectations. Chamberlain watched these changes with interest, and they encouraged him to reflect on the long journey he had taken. After years of playing roles on television, film, and stage, he started to think about telling his own story. Writing became a way for him to look back at his past and understand the choices he had made. This reflection eventually led him to publish his memoir, Shattered Love, a Memoir. In the book, he finally spoke openly about the truth he had hidden for so many years. Chamberlain revealed that he was gay and explained the fear he had experienced while building his career in Hollywood. For some readers, the news was surprising because they had grown up seeing him as the classic romantic leading man. For others, especially those familiar with the pressures of the entertainment industry, his honesty was deeply moving and understandable. The memoir did more than simply reveal a secret. It also offered a thoughtful explanation of why he had remained silent for so long. Chamberlain described how the expectations of studios, the attitudes of society, and his own personal fears had all combined to shape his decisions. By sharing his story, he hoped to show that hiding one's true self can carry a heavy